Now that we have seen how to build a dataset using Dataset Builder and using recipes to add derived fields or possibly add some more datasets together, we're going to go through some of the best practices when creating datasets and kind of understand a little bit deeper what's the lowest grain, what's a lookup, and the difference between lookup and joins. So we talked about building datasets in general as the first essential step on your way to create dashboards and stories and so forth. And we typically use a dataset builder, or we just grab a digest node or something similar to create that first dataset, or at least call that the data. And we can add transformations, aggregations using recipes, for example, and merge that dataset together. Now, the data layer in AA Plus, as you have seen, includes several tools, whether the connect, the sync, dataset builder, data flows, and even data prep. And that is just to allow the users to use a mix of these tools to reach the final required data set. In what follows, we're going to talk about, like I mentioned, the best practices and kind of to distinguish between what is a lookup, when you can use it, the joins that are typical in the SQL world, and what is specific to the data set, what we usually call or designate as the lowest grain. So when we build a data set, we start with the particular object we are talking about. Now, again, I'm talking about the objects in Salesforce, but this applies to external data, the same concept. We are talking about what is this data set about. So mainly it's about opportunity. I grab opportunity. I grab the related upper objects and fields, for example, which account this opportunity belongs to, who owns it, and so forth. Same thing for cases and accounts. And it is recommended to add all the related fields / related objects. So when you create that data set that is about opportunity, it has all the related, again, fields from those objects. This is very important if you're going to leverage something like connect data sources on the dashboard, or even for join purposes or lookup purposes that relate to adding data together or data sets together. Now we've seen the typical exercise of creating the opportunity data set. So again, as a reminder, it might look something like this. You start with opportunity as the root, that is the lowest grain. That means every record in this data set is going to be a unique opportunity, hence why we call it the lowest grain. We started from here. Typically in a data set builder, you are using what we call a lookup. A lookup will go from one opportunity and grab the one matching record from account and get the information of that account to the opportunity level. Same thing to the owner of the opportunity, and a little bit difference here from the first exercise we've seen in the series. I'm adding the owner of the account itself, of the record itself. So same concept, it's a lookup. So pretty much what I'm trying to emphasize on here is when you start with this object, if you have 1,000 records here, you are pretty much going to get 1,000 records in the end. And the data flow might look something like this. Again, as we move to the new prep or the recipe 3.0, or if you're using recipes, you might see a little bit of a different UI, but pretty much a similar concept that we have the nodes and we are augmenting or connecting the data with the final resulting data set right here. So these relationships are pretty much our augments or single lookups. I'm mentioning single lookups to distinguish between the single lookups, which bring back the one matching record, versus the multi-value lookup, which is not going to be covered in this particular topic, but within the series, this YouTube playlist, if you go to video 19, we talk extensively about what's multi-value lookup, how you can leverage it. And again, in this particular chapter or video, we are talking about the single lookup, meaning I am only bringing one matching record for the opportunity or for the lowest object, in this case opportunity, to that final data set. And this is what we usually mention as it's the grain or the grain level of the data set. So if I look at the data set, if I didn't design it, one of my first questions would be to ask, or at least to deduce, what is the grain level? What is the unique ID or unique records in this data set. Now, if no one is there or there's no documentation to provide that information, a simple thing you could do is, if you go to a lens perspective, is just do a unique of that particular ID that you suspect that is the grain level and the count of rows. So if your count of rows in this data set is 700, let's say, and you do a unique count of, or it's called unique of opportunity ID, it's also 700. That means the grain level or the lowest grain of this data set is opportunity indeed. Now, if we follow our exercise here, again, this would be a sample of the data set. If I explore it, these are my opportunity records. And if I do a quick exploration, I'm going to get count of rows, sum of amount, certain number. So if I go and see an actual number right here, this is my opportunities, let's say, that we've built. And I have, the different records. If I go do a quick count of rows, sum of amount, I can see that, let's say in this case, it's 674. That's count of rows. I am sure that this is 674 unique opportunities because that is the grain. And if someone asks me about the amount, let's say there's no filters or stages, just the general amount, I'm confident to say it's 783 million because there's no duplication of any record. And this is very important in the discussion when we go to the different join results. So again, keep that in mind. The data set has a specific grain. It's easy to be defined. And if I do a quick measure, count of rows, sum of amount, I'm pretty sure that that is the correct one that I'm looking for, the correct numbers or correct values. Let me just close these a bit, go back to the slides. So now let's consider a scenario where I am augmenting, I am adding to the opportunity to the account. In this case, let's say there's a requirement where someone's asking, I have these accounts, and this is just a sample filtered, and I want to bring the opportunities to these accounts. Now, from a typical SQL or maybe operation reports, one might think that, okay, accounts, I'm starting with the left. I have Abbott 358, I have Adams, Atkins, Aguilar. I have 4 records here. And the matching opportunities on the right here, I have opportunity McLaughlin, for example, Abbott 358, that's 1. Atkins has 3 opportunities right here. I can see them. Sorry, 2 opportunities. And Aguilar has 3 opportunities. And one of the things that one might think and go do first is go and do a quick what we call accounts lookup. So start with accounts and try to bring opportunities. Well, the issue here is, and again, as you can see from the screen, we had 358, 1 opportunity, okay, matching, but Adams had nothing, by the way. So we can see there's no opportunities here. Atkins 907 has 2 records and Aguilar has 3 records. So that the count should be 3 opportunities and the sum of these amounts. But if I go and do simple accounts lookup up, I can see that the result is not matching what I'm expecting. What I'm finding is the Abbott 358 went to the other opportunity, which, just for coloring right here, this is from opportunity, let's say, and it found the first record, brought it in. Adams went to look for any matching record and opportunity. Pretty much the record, we found nothing, so it's null, 0. Atkins brought only 1 opportunity, Lewis 258. I'm supposed to bring Lewis 258 and Morton 591. So the second one did not get brought in. Similarly, for Aguilar 870, I only got a record. And the reason for that is the lookup. So let's go and take a look here. This is a recipe. I'm doing a quick lookup from accounts, that sample account that I had, to opportunity, and I can see that using this particular lookup, this is not the result that I'm looking for. So you should not do an accounts which is a higher grain, it's a higher than opportunity, look up to a lower data set opportunity in this case. You should not do, again, from a single lookup perspective, you should not do a higher grain account, single lookup to a lower grain. You will get the wrong results. All right. This is why, again, we have to be very careful with lookups. We stress a lot when you start, building a data set and you want to start. You want to use lookups, matching one record. You want to start with the lowest grain, with the lower object. So keep that in mind. Like I mentioned, there are other resolutions or solutions. If you want to use, the multi-value, we talked about it. If you want to use connect data sources for, instead of combining them on the data layer, those two data sets, you want to leave them as is and use connect data sources, or even some cycle. You can check the chapters in this playlist series too, and you can find those different solutions. But we're still focusing on, just for now, understanding what the lookup, how it runs. Then we talked about the lowest grain and the lowest grain in a data set, and we're going to talk about joins in the next part. As a summary, keep in mind, Dataset Builder always starts with the lowest grain. It is okay to build these, what I'm calling base level data sets. So when you go into an environment, you're going to take a look at your main objects, and you're going to say, okay, I'm going to have to build X number of base level data sets, one about opportunity, one about cases, one about campaigns, and one about accounts, and so forth. And then you're going to try to figure out how to combine them, if you need to combine them on data layer or leave it to the dashboard layer. Dataset Builder can help you understand the relations. So there's a way, let's say you start with a higher grain, and then you try to add another object, and if you can't see that in the lookup, that means you started at the high grain, you can't see it in the list. For example, if you pick account and you go look to join or to add opportunity, you're not going to see in Dataset Builder. So it kind of helps you understand what level you're starting with, especially if you don't understand, or you were not, you don't have documentation about how these objects are being created in the environment, again, specifically with custom objects, for example. So a few diagrams to illustrate this. You might have seen this before, but again, just good to remind ourselves. If we're looking at this environment where we have products, opportunity, account, and user, I have 4 objects here, and I need to build, let's say, a dashboard about opportunities or dashboard about products. In general, how many data sets I will end up with in this scenario. Remember the one thing I said about base data set, baselines, and bring whatever you can from the upper level. So if you look at this, I will end up with 4 possible data sets, base data sets, one starting with products. I pull opportunities, pull account, and pull user. I'll call it product opties or product data set. Then I will start with another one, opportunities, pull account and user, and then build one just accounts and one just users. The reason, let's take opportunity for example. If I start with opportunity and pull the account, because it's a single lookup, and lookup in general, I will only bring the accounts that have opportunities because I'm starting from here. So only the matching records, only accounts that have opportunities will be brought. So for a dashboard that's about opportunities, the green data set is fine. But if next day or some other users say, I want to see all of my accounts, whether they have opportunities or not, then this green data set is not going to be enough. And I will have to go and just build a data set around account by itself. Okay. And similarly, typically when we add cases will be a 5th data set. Cases that goes back to users, to the owner, to which account, that will be its own data set. So notice at this stage, I am not typically worried about having to combine everything in a data set. I'm looking at my objects, at my data, in a sense of, okay, what themes I need to create around them, my data set. So I have a product theme, product data set, opportunity data set, case data set, account and user, and so forth. All right. Now that we have kind of understood the data sets builder, the base, the lowest grain, let's talk about joins. And for that, I'm going to use 3 sample data sets. The first one is opportunity, has 4 records. The first opportunity relates to an account 1, opportunity 2, account 1, account 2 has 1, Now this opportunity has no account. Typically, you will not see this. Let's because every opportunity has to relate to an account. But let's say there's some data error here, and I have no account here, and I have first opportunity illuminations, silhouette, lost, mighty echoes, and I have some amounts. The thing to take from this picture is I have for account one I have two opportunities. For account two I have one opportunity, and I have an orphan opportunity that is not relating to an account. All right, the second one is account, and I have only three accounts. I have colors, dawn, ocean. I have some business unit account, let's say sample. And again, that's it. This is unique. This is a higher level. I don't have duplicates. And again, three accounts. Remember, there's four opportunities, three accounts. Then I go to cases. And in cases, I have three cases again. But I have the first two, they belong to the same account. Account one, time to run floating. And case three belongs to account three, silent cries. And again, some days, let's say, since they were open or something. So just as a recap, again, I have the account, I have opportunities, two of them belong to the same account, and I have cases, two of them also belong to the same account, account one, and I have account three here. So now we are going to explore joins, the left, right, inner, the outer, and when we talk about joins in Einstein Analytics in this particular scenario, we talk about the full left, full right. That means we're going to get all of the matching record, the duplicate records that as we're going to see in a bit. But for simplicity, we're going to call them just full, right, inner, and left. Okay, so we're going to start with the ops inner join case. So one might assume, okay, I have opportunities data set, I have cases data set, I have a requirement to bring them on the same dashboard. So I'm going to try to use inner join and get the data. Well, if you use inner join, as you can see, this is the result. And the result is saying that I started with opportunities. So I have all of my opportunities that are matching to cases based on account, right? So I have account ID in opportunities, and I have account ID in cases, and I'm going to try to find the matching accounts and bring the results, opportunities, and cases. So if you recall, the first two opportunities belong to account one. The first two cases belong to account one. Those are the matching records. But what's happening is for opportunity one, account one, it's going to cases and picking up both cases belonging to account one. Because account one in cases had case one and case two. So what I'm getting actually here on this side, I'm duplicating the record of the opportunity. So what's happening is the first time opportunity 01 goes to cases, bring the first one, but then finds that there's another one. So it repeats again. This is duplicate record of opportunities, but it's bringing me case one and case two. Same thing is happening, but from the case perspective, right? So for the case, for opportunity two, right? Opportunity two also has account one, and again goes to cases, finds that case one and case two are with account one, and I end up again with four records, duplicating opportunity one and one, two and two. Amounts are duplicating, count of opportunities duplicating, and similarly in the case side. So I am finding the matching records, but there is some duplication. I am losing my lowest grain, my uniqueness of each record. In this case, these records are not necessarily unique. And by that, look at this record. For example, this is opportunity 2, but it has case 1. And this opportunity 1 has case 1. So what I mean by unique is that some of the values are repeating. 432 is repeating. 500 and 500 is repeating. And if you want to take a look at it quickly in recipes, so again, this is ops inner join cases. And what I have here is, if you look at it, I am using an inner join. I'm not using a lookup, and I can see that this is what's happening. I'm getting only the matching records in this case, but there is some duplication. So inner join is giving me the result, give me only opportunities and cases that have some match on the account, but there's some homework to do also, or extra work, because there's some duplication of the records. So that's for inner join. If we do a left join, which is a full left, like I mentioned, if I start with ops and go and get all the cases matching, then I'm going to keep all of the ops. So I had initially 4 ops. I have 1, I have 2, I have 3 and 4, but I can also see some duplication happening here. And I'm getting all the cases that have matching ops, or let me rephrase this. I'm getting all the cases where the accounts from ops have matching in cases. So I'm bringing case 1 and case 2 because they're on account 1. I'm bringing again case 1 and case 2 because they match on opportunity 2. I am keeping opportunity 3 and 4, although they don't have any match. So that's the left. The left keeps everything from this side, left join, brings whatever matches on the right side, but there's some duplication if the records, find more than a match, and that's a left join. So again, it's not exactly what I wanted. And again, if we take a look at it right here, this is simply a left join, and it's giving me these. It's giving me the data, it's giving my ops, and bring me whatever of these ops have cases. But there's again duplication and some homework to be done. Okay, so that was the left. If we go to the right, right is pretty much similar just from the cases perspective. So I'm going to keep all cases and whatever matches opportunities. Think about ops right cases is similar to cases left op. And again, I have all the cases and whatever cases associated with ops, but the cases I have some duplication, so the numbers duplicate here and the counts too of cases. Now the last one in this case is full outer join, and as expected, full outer should give me all the ops and all the cases, whether they match or don't. If they match on more than a record, then duplicate it, like here, op1 repeats, because it has case 1 and case 2. 2 repeats, it has again case 1, case 2 based on account 1. Op3, op4, nothing, but case 3 has nothing and keep it. So I'm getting everything. And then again, if I needed to report on this or do some dashboard or queries, etc., there will be some homework to kind of not do any aggregate or duplicate duplication of some of amount or days or counts. So keep that in mind. Now, as a reminder, if we were to do an ops single lookup to cases, we will only pick the first, or actually it is a random matching record. So I am keeping, and this is a big difference, ops lookup, I am keeping the uniqueness from the left. Every record is a unique op, only the 4 ops, nothing repeating. I go to cases and bring again, not the first. Typically you might see the first here, but in theory it should be any random record that's matching. So took op account 1, went to cases, found case 1, brought it in. That's it. So case 2 is not being picked up here. And for opportunity 2, same thing. It went to cases, found the first match, and brought it back. Again, this is the single lookup. For multi-value lookup, you can go check the other video, but that's an expected behavior of ops lookup. So again, if we look at the environment, again, we talked about the right join, the full outer join. And if we go for the lookup cases, as I can see, I'm keeping the uniqueness here, but I'm not catching all the cases. So even in this case, the lookup is not the greatest fit. The single lookup is not the greatest fit between differing grain data sets. So this is op grain, this is case grain. A single lookup is not going to solve this by combining them together, right? So again, we're talking about the different ways we can approach this at the data layer at this stage. Now there is a curious case. I'm just calling, a fun name, curious case of the ops left join account. This actually gives me the correct results. And the reason is because there is only one matching record in accounts for each op. So each op in general should belong to one account. So if I start with ops, and in this case, I am starting with my ops right here. If I go to find the account name or account billing or whatever based on the account ID, I should go and find only one record. My hire here should be, in this case, it's only matching one record. So the ops left join accounts is actually very similar to ops lookup accounts. And again, the reason because this grain, although they are different grains, but this particular grain is unique in a sense to op. Each op will have only one matching account, and in this case, it kind of again is very similar to the lookup. Now, to amplify that, what we just talked about, that the curious case of the ops left join account. If you notice, the account left join op is going to be completely different again because the account is a higher grain, and what it means is for each account I might have multiple ops, and if I do account left join, my each of my accounts is going to repeat by the number of matching ops. So if you look at this, I have account 1 has 2 ops immediately by looking at this, and I can see that it has 2 ops, illuminations, silhouette. Account 2 has nothing, has 1. In this case, Dawn has opportunity 3 lost. Account 3, Ocean, has nothing, and it got pulled again because it's left join. So again, account left join op is not, from a data perspective, not necessarily wrong, but it is messing the number of records. So you can't do a simple count of account here or sum of business unit because there's some duplication. So bottom line is just you need to be careful when using joins to understand what is the left side, what is the right side, what are these data sets, what's the grain, and so forth. Okay, so this is very important to understand, and we have verified this with these samples. Now, since we have talked about both lookups and grains, so why the grain matters and the argument for the lookup approach, this is what I'm kind of advocating for as best practice is it's okay again to build those base level data sets that have a unique grain. As you have seen, the using the joins and the duplication of the records messes up the direct exploration of the lens, meaning I cannot get a true count of rows or sum of amount or average of the metrics immediate because there is some duplication of the records. This can lead in the hands of non-experienced end user or some end user who doesn't know the duplication of these records to be misled by just doing some simple exploration or calculation. So the lookups again are a better approach for those initial base data sets. This way you can make sure you have these data sets, they have their unique grain, and then you can enrich them by for example from other fields and so forth, but you can also use some multi-value lookups, or you can leverage the connect data sources or even cycle or the query blending techniques on the dashboard to resolve that issue of having multiple data sets on the same dashboard. So an example, let's consider, in this case, we have Rockstar user Frank and his data sets. So Frank is an end user exploring the lookup based opportunity data set. So we have a data set based on opportunity. It's a unique grain. He can easily get the count of ops, total amounts just by doing some simple explorations. And whether he's exploring on the data set itself or in the dashboard, clicking on the drop down saying exploring that particular chart or widget. And anyway he explores, he can see that the results should be correct and he can easily understand those measures. Now let's take another scenario where Frank has another data set that was based on ops left join cases. It's called, let's say, ops and cases information. Remember, this data set has duplicate records. So when Frank goes and do a simple exploration or count of ops or sum of amount of ops, he's going to get the wrong numbers because there's a duplication of those records. And what the extra thing he will need to do is do some additional group or compare table to actually get the correct results. So let me show you what I mean by simple illustration. This is the ops lookup account. Unique records of ops. So if I do a count of rows or sum of amount by account, for account 1, I get 1.5. For account 2, I get 250. These are the correct numbers. 500 plus 1000 from our example. Account 2, 250. Correct. But if I use the other data set, the one that is based on the ops and cases, and I want to do, for example, the amount per account, it's not straightforward. In this example, I might need to do an account ID and a name, and then average name of the opportunity, average of the amount to get the right, amount. And in this case, notice they're not even in the same on the same bar. I need to visually add them, right? Or it could be a complicated scenario where you're using compare tables. So let me just really quickly switch back to the lenses. So as a recap, we talked about, so this is just a simple exploration. Like I mentioned, this is an opportunity based on the lookup. Let's go back to this example in particular here. So I have a account 1, account 2. I have 1.5, like I mentioned, it's 1,500, and I have 250. If I went to the cases, ops and cases, it's a little bit different. I need to group by account ID. Remember, that's duplicating. Then I need to group by opportunity name. Now I have the correct amounts. I have 500 for eliminations, 1000 for silhouette, and I'm doing an average, not a sum, because remember, these are duplicating. Again, I have 2 eliminations, I have 2 silhouette, so that number will be wrong. So if I do just a quick sum, just to show you, the sum is not going to be correct. I have 1K and I have 2K. So that means there's 2 rows of silhouette, 2 rows of elimination, 4 rows of account 1. And that's what we saw in our ops left join cases. Another approach could be, just to show you another one, could be to go to group by account ID, but then you go to sum of amount as a compare table, 3000 duplicate, you get the unique of name, unique count of opportunities, and then you do a division. So you can see that the exploration is not straightforward. And that is why I repeat that using joins, they're powerful, but you need to understand that they will mess up the data set grain level. And that will affect, if especially specifically the end users, if they have the exploration option or they are exploring that data. All right. So what do we do if we are asked to have ops and cases on the same dashboard or an accounts maybe? And when do you use the join approach? Because they are there and they are powerful. So my recommendation is, if the scenario here is to allow end users to explore data, or if there's a strong team, for example, handling data sets, supporting a wider user group, then it's a good approach absolutely to use the base data sets, the lookups, and you leverage other features. Example, the connect data sources on dashboard, where you have multiple data sets on the same dashboard, or linked dashboards. So you preserve that concept of this dashboard is about opportunities with a little information about cases. If you want that information about cases, you click on the link and go to cases, and explore that based on the case data set. For example, there's also, we mentioned the multi-value enrichment of some certain data sets. It works for accounts data set where you want to bring some information from ops aggregated, like total amount or total number of cases and so forth. You could also use some more advanced techniques like SACL or blending queries on the dashboard. And in this case, we preserve using base data sets, but we leverage other things like I mentioned, dashboard layer, to kind of combine them and get the data. This is also very important when you work with Einstein Discovery to build stories. Usually, in most cases, the data sets that you build the story/model on should have a unique non-repeating grain. Let's say you're looking to predict the opportunities time to close, or increase amount, or customer churning. All of these mean data sets that do not have repetitive records. That's very important too. Now we can still use joint data sets, of course, but again, with great power comes great responsibility. So you have to understand that, if I'm using joins, for example, exploring data set might be disabled for end users, so they wouldn't use the wrong metrics. You might use that to create intermediate or complementary data sets where you have done your aggregations or joins and you're using them to enrich the dashboards, or at least you know who's going to be using them to, it's well documented. You can use them to answer specific questions. For example, if I want to know information about all of my accounts on all of ops at the same time, which is probably an outer join, so you design a big data set, and then when you build a dashboard and you're locking it down from exploration perspective, for example, you understand what kind of metrics you're going to use, right? For average of the account or amount of the opportunities and so forth. So whatever the join you use, in this case, you are leveraging it in a big data set, but also you're understanding it, the structure before you're building that dashboard. And within the same context, if you're dealing with very large data sets, individual large base data sets, you might consider having one data set instead of many on the dashboard, just to kind of maybe enhance the performance or make the dashboard designer experience a little bit less complicated from SAC column binding and focusing just to deduce the metrics and the different queries, where you have just again one data set makes things much more simpler on that dashboard. And in conclusion, this is pretty much it. Like all of these tools are available for you, whether it's lookups, single or multi-value. The joins are available, and they are very powerful. The argument or best practice is to have those base data sets. And if you want to use joins, absolutely go forward and use them. But just remember to document what is happening with those data sets, have some descriptions, and whoever is building the dashboards and the charts and the metrics, just to understand that, again, if there's joins involved, there could be duplications, and the typical metrics might change, for example, from sum amount to average amount, or using some compare table and so forth. With that, I'm going to leave you with this slide or just screenshot some of the appendix. So again, in the training files, we've added the files that you saw, those three sample data sets, the opportunities, the accounts, and the cases. CSV, you can download them. You can follow what we did in this video from a lookup perspective, from a recipe perspective, to explore the joins and kind of compare with what you have here. The typical Academy videos, again, are the same channel, and some of the typical help main links, and also the Trailblazer group and the badges. And that's it for this chapter.